Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Thursday afternoon. For lack of better terms, just puzzling news coming out for the Florida Gators as defensive lineman Dontre Robinson leaving the program, entering the transfer portal. And I think the first thought for almost every single Florida fan that follows this program and kind of understands where this roster sits going into 2025, we got to go grab at least one, probably two big bodies in the middle of the defensive line. Now, it's not like you're losing a player that was a freshman All American last year and should be a first team All SEC guy going into 2025. That's not the case, but he was a very solid freshman in 2024, was expected to be a very large piece of this rotational defensive line that we're going to see in the 2025 year. A lot of y'all been putting in the comment section. I'll raise my hand and say I quite frankly agree with you guys. We were already a little bit concerned about the depth in the middle of the defensive line. Now it is a very big concern for Florida going into 2025. And my advice to Billy Napier would be go out and be aggressive in terms of addressing the concern that you have. I know it's not ideal to kind of be desperate and pay a lot of money for a 6-month rental going into the 2025 year. That's not how Billy Napier wants to do things. I understand that. But I also think on the flip side, you look at this roster in 2025, one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the country, what we think are elite playmakers on the outside, veteran offensive line with a defense that we expect to be good. This is a season in 2025 where, one, it's important for Billy Napier to win to keep his job. But I think just as importantly, this team can do some massive damage in the 2025 year, but you want to make sure all the boxes are checked. And going into 2025, we only have one box left unchecked. That is the interior defensive line. And it's not necessarily about top end talent because you have one of, if not the best interior defensive lineman we have in the country in Caleb Banks. The concern is, are we deep enough to win in November in the SEC with the defensive line that we have right now? You look at every team that wins the SEC championship, you look at national championship caliber teams. One of the most important things, are we deep enough along the lines of scrimmage? And I think right now, it's hard to be confident that Florida is. And so my advice here is, and it's not fun to talk about these situations, but I think most Florida fans probably agree with this sentiment, is this team can be really good in 2025. Make sure you do everything you can to maximize this team in the 2025 year. Like the way I look at it, we are in win now for the Florida Gators. When you have a talent like DJ Lagway, you got to try to capitalize. It's the last box unchecked. I think Florida needs to, for lack of better terms, open up the checkbook and go out and make it happen over the next couple of days. It's never ideal to have, for lack of better terms, kind of a fire to put out this late in the spring transfer portal window. You have one. I think you have the means to go put it out. Interested to see where Florida decides to go in the defensive tackle market. Now, I've spent the last hour or so since the news came out getting in the laboratory, and now I got a couple of defensive linemen that I think Florida should at least give a look to in the transfer portal. Before we get into it, as always, the Florida fans, appreciate you guys. And look, these episodes are never as fun to do, like talking and breaking down a commitment, but the conversations that we have to have. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Whether we're breaking down the spring game or talking spring practice, the amount of support y'all show, good, bad, ugly, it's been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, I want to kind of flesh out the situation we just saw unfold with Dontre Robinson, because I've been very complimentary. Billy Napier's been very good at retaining the young talent on this roster. Like, that was clearly the goal for Florida in the offseason. Coming off that 2024 year, specifically the version of Florida that you saw in November, like if you could just run it back with that team's going to do some damage in the 2025 year. That was the goal for Florida. Keep guys like Austin Barber, Jake Slaughter, Caleb Banks, keep them out of the NFL draft. Make sure you retain the young talent on your team. That's where most of the resources went for Florida, and I completely agreed with it. I thought Florida was a massive winner of the offseason without even really grabbing anybody in the portal. Now it's time to get aggressive and kind of address the concern that you have. And at the same time, you wanted to retain Dontre. It sounded like it was a very similar situation with Gregory Smith. Two players that we like, two players that Florida wanted to keep. But at the end of the day, you can't pay them money like they were freshman All-American, first team All-SEC guys when it's just not what they were. And so you cut bait, and now you got to go make it happen in the portal. Now, can kind of highlight the issue I have, or not issue, but just like the conversation here. Caleb Banks a dog. We're confident that Jamari Lyons comes back healthy and is a very good defensive lineman for Florida, at least solid. Confident that Mekhi has taken that step. At least that's what we've heard coming out of spring practice. Outside of those three, like what other name do you trust to play significant snaps for Florida in 2025 is probably the question. Maybe Stephon Shivers can give you some, Brian Taylor, Tarvos Brown, but at the end of the day, it's not many, right? You don't have a ton of confidence in what that 2 and 3 deep looks like. Go out and figure it out. Now, who does Florida go after? I think you got to start. The first call, and if I'm Billy Napier, I'm on the phone right now, or I was already on the phone 30 minutes ago. Bernard Guden, best defensive lineman available. It ain't even close anymore. 6'1", 280. I think the thing that'll jump out to a lot of Florida fans is 280 pounds, 6'1". A little bit of a smaller interior defensive lineman, but I'll say this. I turned on that Alabama film. He does not give up much physicality. I mean, he was going up against guys like Tyler Booker, a guy that we think is going to be drafted tonight in the first round. Bernard Guden he has the physicality to play in the SEC. We saw that firsthand when they played Alabama in 2024. Elite pass rusher. I mean, you grab Bernard Guden and you talk about Caleb Banks, Bernard Guden, that is probably the best, or at least one of the best, pass rushing duos of interior defensive linemen that you see in the country. He had 27 quarterback hurries in the 2024 year. This guy can get after the passer and, quite frankly, pretty dang good against the run. 6'1", little shorter, good pad level, can do a decent job holding the point of attack, but really athletic, knows how to get off blocks, run the line of scrimmage. This not only addresses the depth concern for Florida, but it also allows Florida to get another difference maker on the defensive line. Like, you go get Bernard Guden, that you're upgrading from Dontre Robinson on the inside, at least in my opinion. Number 2, Braxton Felly from Boise State. This is a little bit more of, hey, we're just simply going to address depth. Like, Braxton Felly ain't going to come into Florida and be a first-team All-SEC guy. It's a nice opportunity, though, because I think who is the leader for Dontre Robinson? I think the leader for the leader for Braxton Felly was the Miami Hurricanes. Well, it sounds like the Miami Hurricanes are going to be playing for Dontre Robinson. And so if you're Florida, you go out and grab a guy like Braxton Felly, 6'1", 295. Again, not a first-team All-SEC guy, but a guy that's played over 1,200 snaps over the last 2 years and know that he can come in and kind of do the dirty work. Not going to stuff the stat sheet, but be a dirty work kind of guy that gives you the adequate depth that you need on the defensive line. Last one, I'll kind of note Joel Starlings from North Carolina. Not my first option because we haven't seen him play a ton, but has the body type that you're looking for. Former 4-star prospect coming out of Richmond, Virginia, 6'4", 320. A guy that probably can give you rotational snaps in the SEC in 2025. A guy that's still getting better as a football player, only going into year 3. If I'm Florida, I guess, and again, I've been very complimentary of Billy Napier. I'm going to get a little critical right now. You're talking to Zaquan Patterson. You're talking to, Andrew Simpson from Boise State. I get Zaquan Patterson. Zaquan Patterson, a guy with 3 years of eligibility remaining, plus a redshirt. You're a guy that you can grab in the portal and potentially transform into a starter somewhere down the road. Andrew Simpson makes no sense to me. Like, I get he's the number 1 linebacker available in the portal. Look, Andrew Simpson ain't sniffing the field for Florida in 2025 unless you have a couple of injuries at the linebacker position. He ain't better than Putt. He ain't better than Miles Graham. He ain't better than Childs. He ain't better than Jaden Robinson. Why are we going after a 5th-year senior that's going to be not even in the 2 deep for us at the linebacker position? Like, if I'm Billy Napier, I know I have a good team. Now I got one position that I got to go out and address. That's what I'm doing. At blinders. Go focus at the spring portal window is for addressing the immediate needs that you have in 2025. Florida's only got one of them. Go out and make it happen if you're Billy Napier in Florida. Those are a couple options I have. Obviously, not an ideal situation for Florida fans to be in, not a fun episode to talk about, but you kind of have to have the discussion. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.